To build a small form factor gaming computer, you need a small form factor case. In this instance, I've got a Silverstone small form factor case. They call them shoebox, but it's much smaller than a tower computer, so it fits in more places. And then these are the other components that you need to build it. You're going to need a power supply. You're going to need a motherboard. You can see in this case I got a Phantom Z590. So when you go to buy the components, they have compatibility guides that help you to know which chip goes with which motherboard. In this case, I wanted to be able to run a Gen 11 chip because that is compatible with the 30 series video cards. I was hoping to get a 30 series video card, but they were very difficult to come by. This is the motherboard that you get. This is the SSD, so it's solid state drive. That's basically your disk drive. This is the chip. It's an Intel i5 chip. In this case, it's an 11400, so it's an 11 series chip. And then there's the RAM. And in this case, it's the Vulcan RAM. So when you buy these components, they'll tell you what speed RAM and what chip is compatible with which motherboard and what capability it gives you. Those components I got them all new. This I had to get used. This is the video card. This is what does the bulk of your gaming. In this case, it's a Gigabyte 1080, and so that's an NVIDIA card. It's a 1080, and even though it's now 3 generations old, they're up to 30 series. This is a 10 series. It is a serious gaming card, and it plays the game I play is Microsoft Flight Simulator. It plays that game excellent in 2K resolution and below, so 1080 would run really good. Runs in 2K great. To do 4K you need a newer card, and they're pretty expensive. They're $1,000. These are currently going for about $200 to $300. I'm going to show you a spreadsheet that shows you what all these components cost, but to build the computer is about $700, and then you have to of course add the video card to that. This is the inside of the computer. You can see there are just a few major components that make it up. First of all, there's the case. This is the chassis. I've got the top of it off. They're made to come apart pretty easy. There's just a few thumb screws in the back. The top lifts off and it opens up to this. The main thing is along the bottom here, you see they call it the motherboard. So that's the main computer board, and everything plugs into that. On top of that, the other component you need is a CPU, Central Processing Unit. It's just the chip. Typically, this is designed for an Intel chip. To keep my costs low, I went with an i5. They're good performance, but they're not the most expensive. And it comes with a cooler. So the chip is under here. The cooler is a fan, and it's got a fin structure that wicks heat away from the CPU. That comes with the CPU. And so you mount the CPU on. They give you a little bit of thermal paste you put on the CPU, you put it on the board, you attach the cooler to it, and then it plugs in. You'll see it comes with a cord and it plugs into the motherboard over here. I don't know if you can see that okay, but this cord comes around, it plugs in over here. You need to have random access memory. That's these two sticks right here. You plug those into the motherboard too. There's 4 slots. I'm only using 2 of them, but you plug in your random access memory there. That's your RAM, and I have 16 gigabytes. That's kind of middle of the road. And then the new thing is, instead of having a hard disk drive, you have a solid state drive. This right here is my hard disk drive. It plugs straight into the motherboard, has a special connector where you just put it in, put it down, and then there's a single screw right here that holds it in. This is a 1 terabyte hard disk drive, but it's all solid state. They call it an NVMe, but it plugs in right there. And to keep this build under $1,000, I found some middle of the road thing. You could put up to 32 or more gigs of RAM. 16 is what I use to keep this a budget gaming build, but it seems to work fine. Next, you see this connector right here. That's where your graphics card is going to go, and you can see it's got a large connector. So that's going to sit in there, and then it has a screw that holds it in that goes in over here. That mounts in there. This is a GTX 1080. This card now, because graphics cards are becoming more available, you can get this for around $200, $200 to $300. This thing runs flight sim and a lot of heavy-duty games really well, and it's 2 generations old. They're up to 30 series cards. They have a 3080 out now. This is a 1080, and it does amazingly well on graphics. And so with this graphics card, those components, you can assemble a computer. The one thing that I haven't showed you yet that also goes into this build is a power supply. I'm going to show you this power supply. This is a 650 watt power supply. I'd actually recommend maybe a 750 watt. This is called non-modular, meaning all the cords are just come out the back. You can't disconnect them. I'd also recommend getting a modular one. A modular one, I'll show you what a modular one looks like. A modular one looks like this. It's the same unit, but on the back it has lots of connectors, and you only connect the cords that you need to go to the components that you need. And so to keep mine a budget build, I used this power supply, but you can even get these very economically that are modular, and then you just use the cords you want. But this is going to fit in the case in here, and then all of these, actually a lot of these you don't use. That's why I recommend a modular one. You're only going to use a couple of them. This one powers the motherboard, and you're going to need one that powers your graphics card, and that's this one right here. You also need power if you want to add an additional disk drive, but really these are the ones you use, and then there's one that goes to the CPU that's over here. So this powers the CPU, this powers your graphics card, this powers the motherboard. All the rest of this you don't really need. So if you get a modular one, you can just leave those off. But these are the main components, and then the case, these are the cords for the case to plug in. It plugs in right here into the motherboard, so when you push the buttons to turn it on and turn it off and so forth, it controls that. But you can see those are the basic components that go into a computer. It's not much. You're not really building it, you're really assembling it. You assemble, most of it goes on the motherboard. You got to add a graphics card and a power supply. And then what I have is, I actually added these 2 fans that go into this and plug in. They're powered from the motherboard. This fits in there, and it actually just moves more air and keeps the whole thing a little cooler, because this is pretty compact. I like the fact that it's a shoebox size. It doesn't take up a lot of room on a desktop or in your room. It's fairly compact, but you can still fit everything you need in there. The one thing, this is called a micro ATX motherboard, and so it's smaller than a full-size one, so you just get one slot for a full-size graphics card. They give you a couple other slots in case you want to do other things, but for graphics card you get one. That's really all I needed. And I'll show you in a spreadsheet what each of these components cost, but you can build this computer for under $1,000 currently. Now, I would this is priced getting it used off of eBay. That's where I got this. Is I just purchased it used. Everything else I bought new, and I can tell you where, and I can provide links to show where I got it. But you can assemble a gaming computer for under $1,000. Okay, this spreadsheet shows the components that went into the computer. I show what the component is, for example, the motherboard, what the manufacturer is. In this case, it's an ASRock Z590M, and you'll notice it's a micro ATX. I got that at Newegg. It was $151. The total at Newegg was $363 because I added also this disk drive. So I'll just go down the list. The CPU is Intel Core i5, and you can see it's generation 11. It's the 400 model of that. It was $188. I got it at B&H, so it was $188 with tax and shipping and all that, $204. The case I got is a Silverstone Technology. It's micro ATX computer case. You saw that in the video. And this is the model number of it, $90, Amazon. I guess I skipped this is the RAM. Team Group, Vulcan, DDR4, 16 gigabytes of RAM, $77. I got those two things at Amazon. Then the power supply is 650 watt power supply by Game, $47. And then the disk drive I also got at Newegg, and this is the solid state drive. Call them NVMe. It plugs right in the motherboard. That's shown in the video as well. When you total it all up, $797.70. So less than $800 to build that. That gives you a budget of $200 to get a video card to play games. And with the greater availability of 30 series cards now, you can get a video card pretty much for around that price, $200. So for $1,000 or less, you can build a small form factor gaming PC. The video card that Microsoft recommends for playing flight simulator is the GeForce GTX 980. And I'm on eBay. I clicked buy it now. So there's a whole list of them that are right under $200. There's $185 free shipping. These are good cards. They're older, but they're good cards. They have 4 gigabytes of VRAM, and they will play flight simulator. When I built my computer initially, cards were really expensive, so I got a 750 Ti. It only had 2 gigabytes of RAM, and I was able to play the game. And not everything. I had to turn down settings and so on. It played it okay, but this would play it much better. And then, as prices continue to come down, you could upgrade to an even faster video card. There's really no end to that. You can spend $2,000 for a video card, but this is definitely would get you playing and be a decent gaming graphics card.